Welcome to Millennium News 24 Daily News Update. I am with you. Now details this time. The defense rested its case Monday in the murder trial of a woman accused of striking her Boston police officer boyfriend with her SUV, clearing the way for closing arguments and jury deliberations after nearly 2 months of testimony. Karen Reed did not take the stand after 3 final witnesses testified in the high-profile case that's created a media storm in part by accusations of police misconduct that have been fueled by true crime bloggers. Closing arguments will take place Tuesday, with 1 hour for each side, before jurors begin their deliberations, the judge said. Prosecutors contend Reed struck John O'Keefe with her sieve and then left the scene in January 2022, leaving him unconscious in the snow after a night of bar hopping. He was found unresponsive hours later outside the Canton home of another Boston police officer who was hosting a party. An autopsy found he died of hypothermia and blunt force trauma. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange will plead guilty to a felony charge in a deal with the U.S. Justice Department that will allow him to walk free and resolve a long-running legal saga that spanned multiple continents and centered on the publication of a trove of classified documents. Assange left a British prison on Monday and will appear later this week in the U.S. federal court in the Northern Mariana Islands, a U.S. Commonwealth in the Western Pacific. He's expected to plead guilty to an Espionage Act charge of conspiring to unlawfully obtain and disseminate classified national defense information, the Justice Department said in a letter filed in court. The guilty plea, which must be approved by a judge, brings an abrupt conclusion to a criminal case of international intrigue and to the U.S. government's years-long pursuit of a publisher whose hugely popular secret-sharing website made him a cause célèbre among many press freedom advocates who said he acted as a journalist to expose U.S. military wrongdoing. Investigators, by contrast, have repeatedly asserted that his actions broke laws meant to protect sensitive information and put the country's national security at risk. The cargo ship Dolly headed out of Baltimore for Virginia on Monday, nearly 3 months after it lost power and crashed into one of the Francis Scott Key bridges supporting column sand caused the bridge to collapse. The 984-foot Dolly started moving shortly before 8:30 a.m., with 4 tugboats. The Dolly was sailing under its own power with a full crew of 22 and 6 salvage experts, the U.S. Coast Guard said in a news release. The Coast Guard is overseeing the voyage and providing a 500-yard safety zone around the Dolly during its trip. The Dolly is scheduled to go directly to Virginia International Gateway to have roughly 1,500 cargo containers offloaded to reduce draft, the Coast Guard said. The vessel is then scheduled to travel further to Norfolk International Terminal, where it is scheduled to undergo continued salvage and repairs from damage caused during the bridge collapse. Flooding in the Midwestern U.S. killed at least 2, collapsed a railroad bridge and sent water surging around a dam Monday after days of heavy rains that have forced hundreds of people to evacuate or be rescued from rising waters. An Illinois man died Saturday while trying to go around a barricade in Spencer, Iowa, Sioux City's KTIV TV reported Monday. The Little Sioux River swept his truck away, according to a news release from the Clay County Sheriff's Office provided to the station. Officials found the vehicle in the tree line but weren't able to recover his body until Monday because of dangerous conditions. At least 1 person died in South Dakota, Governor Kristi Noem has said without providing details. The flooding brought added misery to parts of Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Minnesota during a vast and stubborn heat wave. In some communities hit by flooding, the temperature Monday afternoon approached 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Hundreds of Iowa residents have needed rescue from record-setting flooding that has swamped parts of the state, covering buildings up to their rooftops, shutting down major roads and disrupting basic services like electricity and drinking water. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds said water in some areas rose above records from 1993, a flood many in the Midwest remember as the worst of their lives. The floods have hit parts of Iowa, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Minnesota. The water was so powerful that it pulled down a train bridge connecting North Sioux City, South Dakota, with Sioux City, Iowa. On the Blue Earth River in Minnesota, water forced its way around the Rapidan Dam and local officials warned off its possible failure. The water is expected to be at its highest early this week. In some places it has already passed, and then the crest of the river will move south, eventually in Toth, Missouri and Mississippi rivers. The Supreme Court on Monday jumped into the fight over transgender rights, agreeing to an appeal from the Biden administration seeking to block state bans on gender-affirming care. The justices' action comes as Republican-led states have enacted a variety of restrictions in health care for transgender people, school sports participation, bathroom usage, and drag shows. The administration and Democratic-led states have extended protections for transgender people, including a new federal regulation that seeks to protect transgender students. The case before the High Court involves a law in Tennessee that restricts puberty blockers and hormone therapy for transgender minors. The Federal Appeals Court in Cincinnati allowed laws in Tennessee and Kentucky to take effect after they had been blocked by lower courts. The U.S. Supreme Court said Monday that it will hear arguments on the constitutionality of state bans on gender-affirming care for transgender minors. The issue has emerged as a begun in the past few years. While transgender people have gained more visibility and acceptance in many respects, half the states have pushed back with laws banning certain healthcare services for transgender kids. Gender-affirming care includes a range of medical and mental health services to support a person's gender identity, including when it's different from the sex they were assigned at birth. The services are offered to treat gender dysphoria, the unease a person may have because their assigned gender and gender identity don't match. The condition has been linked to depression and suicidal thoughts. Gender-affirming care encompasses counseling and treatment with medications that block puberty and hormonotherapy to produce physical changes. A tightly contested race in Virginia between one of America's most conservative conjurers and a challenger endorsed by former President Donald Trump is too close to call, the Associated Press said Monday. The AP issued an advisory saying that the margin separating U.S. Representative Bob Good and State Senator John McGuire is likely to remain within a margin of a single percentage point. That means the race is eligible for a recount under state law. Good, who currently trails by more than 300 votes out of nearly 63,000 cast, has said he will seek a recount if the state electoral board certifies McGuire as the winner. McGuire's lead has actually grown slightly since early Wednesday morning. Good on Monday also told former Trump advisor and right-wing podcaster Steve Bannon that he will be pursuing a legal challenge to block the certification of the count in the city of Lynchburg, the largest city in the 5th congressional district and a Good stronghold. A short break from the daily English news of Millennium News 24. Stay tuned.